Hey everybody. Let's talk about the pyRevit installation. I've done a video touching on the basically the usage of the installer that's provided for pyRevit versus the pyRevit CLI app. But this is going to be the ultimate explanation of how you should get pyRevit on your systems, depending on what kind of user you are and how many other users you want to get pyRevit to. So there generally, if you look at this chart, there are two categories for users. You either have admin rights to the machine that you're using, or you don't have admin rights to the machine that you're using. So you're either an admin or not. Whether you're admin for your organization or not, that's a different question. The admin for your organization definitely have access, has admin rights to the machines. But basically, if you are a user that just want to use pyRevit in this first vertical column, um, whether you're an admin or a non-admin, you can download the installer from website from this. At the time of recording this video, pyRevit is 4.6.9. You can download the installer and install your on your machine and use it. Assuming that you're not a developer, you just want to get pyRevit on your machine and just use the tools and whatnot. This is a convenience installer. This is just there to make pyRevit accessible for users that don't want to deal with software development and other things. They just want to use the tools. They don't want to install it for other users and all that kind of stuff. But if you want to install the pyRevit for all the other users in your organization, if you're managing machines, if you're developing your own add-ons and stuff like that, extensions and whatnot, this method is for you using the pyRevit CLI tool. During the course of the past couple of years that I've been working on pyRevit, I've gotten a lot of requests in varying requests, basically asking to make modifications to the installer to accommodate a certain environment. The perfect solution that I could find to this challenge was to create a CLI tool that allows you to install, configure, and manage all the clones that you have from pyRevit on the user machines. The pyRevit CLI tool installer is provided in the pyRevit Labs repository. I'll provide in this article that you're seeing on the pyRevit blog on how to install pyRevit. You can find a link to it, but basically you just download the installer from there. This is obviously different from the pyRevit itself. This is pyRevit command line interface. It's a very small 15 megabyte installer. There's no complications about this. This is not a very complex tool. It only uses one programming language like C# versus the pyRevit that is a combination of C# script, C# compile, DLLs, and Python scripts. So it's a fairly simple, small installation that you can push to all the user machines. So just to close the conversation about the basically different types of deployments that you want to use, the users, if you want to install pyRevit for yourself, your own use, and you just want to have access to the basic tools and the basic extensions that come with pyRevit, use the installer. It installs the pyRevit to your app data, which is going to be your user's app data. What is it? Remote. Let me actually open it here. So it's going to be user app data, and it goes under pyRevit master and installs it here. It adds the path to user path environment variable. It does it due to the reason not to require admin rights to the machine. So you can easily install pyRevit without having depending on the in the configuration and stuff like that. But to run the installer, you don't need to have admin rights to the user because it installs it to your app data. It sets your user path with the path to the binaries that come with pyRevit, and it stores the configuration out again in app data under the pyRevit as usual. That's the case for both of these. They're both identical. Whether you're an admin or non-admin, is the exact same scenario. In any other scenario other than this, you should really use the pyRevit CLI tool. That involves if you are if you're wanting to install the pyRevit for multiple different users, or you want to get the pyRevit development branch, or you want to get any of the pyRevit other deployments, depending on what kind of configuration you want for pyRevit. And I'll talk more about this in detail if you're for the people that are interested. For the rest of you, For the people that just want to install user for themselves, you can stop watching the rest of the video. Just download the installer, install your machine. If you see any errors, report it on the GitHub issues, on the pyRevit issues, report it and let me know, and I'll try to fix them in a timely manner. The rest of the video, we're going to talk about how to use pyRevit CLI to get the pyRevit on the user machine. So there are two basic conversations on this. Either you are an advanced pyRevit user and want to use different deployments of pyRevit or the pyRevit development branch and stuff like that on your own machine, and you'll probably have, like, you're developing your own extensions and whatnot, and you probably have like multiple different clones of pyRevit installed in different branches and whatnot, depending on what you're trying to do. Or you are an admin that wants to get the pyRevit to multiple different users. The conversation that the CLI tool is pretty much the same. It accommodates both these scenarios, and we're going to talk about in detail about a little bit in detail about this. Mostly, I'm going to talk about the admin user trying to install for all the users, but through the conversation that we're going to have, you're going to see that for the other ones, for your single user that's advanced and wants to maintain the multiple different pyRevit clones and whatnot on the system, you can see what kind of commands are kind of available to you. So when you install the pyRevit CLI tool, using the CLI installer, it installs it to the program to your main program files. So that's the first thing that it requires the admin rights, because it needs to write to the program files. And then it adds the path to the system path, also needs a admin right, but it stores configuration in the app data / pyRevit, because generally the pyRevit CLI tool is designed to manage the configuration for the user that's running the machine. Now, there is a mechanism inside the pyRevit CLI tool that can add the pyRevit configuration that you have created to the program data. You basically seed the configuration. Once you're done with configuring pyRevit the way the users need it, you can seed the configuration to program data, and all the other users that see pyRevit, they can basically when they launch pyRevit, pyRevit uses that default configuration that comes in the program data to kickstart pyRevit with the default settings. This is mainly due to the fact that I have a different mentality when it comes to software. I'm a huge fan of training people rather than limit them. They are kind of limited. There is very limited options for limiting people in how to configure pyRevit and stuff like that, but mostly to accommodate basically use of pyRevit in enterprise environments and whatnot. But it's very limited. pyRevit is not designed to limit the user to do what they want. They can go in and edit the scripts and whatever they want to do. It's a pretty open environment. Talking about that, let's move forward and talk about the CLI tool in more detail. The CLI tool, just to explain based on the configuration that I have here, I have two scripts open here. One is they're both PowerShell scripts. I'm assuming that as a Windows admin, as a user admin, you are familiar with what PowerShell is. But basically, if not, PowerShell is the more advanced shell for Windows. You have seen it like this. If you are not using it, you should stop doing everything else that you're doing in command prompt and convert to PowerShell. Convert all your scripts and everything like that. It's far more superior than any other thing that you're using in Windows to manage the Windows environment. So in this video, I have the PowerShell open at the bottom of this window. This bottom piece that you see is the PowerShell open, and the top part I have two scripts open that we're going to talk about. I'm going to show you how to basically install pyRevit and stuff like that, and create a script that installs it, or a user script that runs at every user login to keep the pyRevit updated and stuff like this. There is a file that I've shared with you. It is a pyRevit CLI module. It's a PowerShell module that has a series of functions in it. I've already loaded them in that PowerShell instance that we are running below, but it has a couple of tests to see if whether a user belongs to a certain security group. These are not required. This is just for for simplicity. Confirm the existence of a path. If it doesn't exist, it creates it. Uninstall an app. There's a function for it. And this is one of the things that we're going to use is the test command exists. It tests to see if the command exists or not. For example, I want to see if pyRevit command exists on this machine or not, and it says that it exists. So you can encapsulate your upgrade and check functions and configuration functions inside an if statement that tests for the availability of the pyRevit command on that machine, and basically runs that. So I'll share this with you. You can import that inside your actual PowerShell script and start using them functions in here. A lot of you watching this video might already know this, but it's just for the sake of the presentation. It makes more sense to go over quickly on these topics. Okay, so when you install pyRevit to pyRevit CLI, no matter where you are, you basically have. I'm going to actually cd to home. And wherever you are, you have access to the pyRevit command. Now, the first thing I want to do is to check the version. So -v checks for the version of the pyRevit at the time of recording this video is 2.0.217. So that's the version that I'm using. You can use basically, so the next step after pushing the pyRevit CLI tool to the user is when you want to clone the pyRevit to the user machine. To have a better discussion on this, I'm going to pull up the pyRevit CLI help and go over topics one by one. So you have the basic understanding of how the pyRevit CLI tools, and then we'll write some scripts on top of this just to show you how things are done and how it could be used. The most important part is opening the pyRevit help. You can just say pyRevit and help. You can do -- help and it prints the help here for you. But if this is not something that you're looking for, you feel more comfortable in a web environment, in a web browser, just pyRevit help without the dashes, and it opens the help for you inside your default browser. This page is part of the, it's a markdown file, part of the pyRevit labs repository. So if you're ever looking for it outside of this command, you can open it from there. Let's talk about a couple of basic options. Getting help, we already talked about the pyRevit help. There are other options to get the text help inside the console, inside the shell that you're running on, and the version, you can do -v or -- version, so shorthand, and the pyRevit online resources. You can use it to open the blogs, open the docs, open the source code on GitHub, the YouTube channel, and the support channel, depending on what you're trying to do. So if you want to, I don't know, put a shortcut in start menu for a user to open the pyRevit documentation, or for source or YouTube channel or whatever, you can just use this command to launch that resource. So pyRevit, for example, YouTube will open the pyRevit YouTube page. So that's that. And then right after that, we go into managing pyRevit clones. The command format is very clear. Basically, it's very clear. You basically clone pyRevit on the user machine. So again, you ran the script and installed the pyRevit CLI, and now you want to install clone pyRevit using the CLI. So let's go through this one by one. In this script, I've imported this pyRevit CLI PSM. We are going to use only one of the functions, so this is not really important. If you don't need to use it, don't. In the first batch, I'm basically saying install.NET if necessary. You can download this MSI installer from internet for different .NET versions. pyRevit requires 4.7.1, and it's basically it checks on the most of the time, depending on what version of Windows you're running this .NET framework is already installed, most probably. But if it's not, you can push it to the user like that, and this script is provided to you. And then, but this is the most important part. After basically the dependencies are satisfied, you can install the pyRevit using this command. Installing pyRevit, you can start a process, file path, which you give to the pyRevit CLI, assigned in the CLI installer executive. This is how you basically are installing the pyRevit CLI on user machines. A lot of you might have a different system. You might be using it, especially in like enterprise environment, you might be using a software that manages all these installations and whatnot for you. So this is only for people that just want to use a pyRevit, a PowerShell script to basically push the installation. But the only thing that you have to do, you wait on the process to be completed, but the only argument that you have to provide is /qn, which means that, run the installer quiet and show no windows. So this runs the installer quietly, installs everything, and reports all the other possible outputs to null, to system dev null. So there's no output coming out from the command. And then, assuming that this installation went through and everything installed perfectly, you added the path of the installation, which is this, to the system path, to the environment path, basically. So going forward through the next steps of this script, you can actually use the pyRevit command. pyRevit command is a pyRevit executive file that sits inside a binary folder installed by this pyRevit CLI tool. So that's why you can always, instead of like pyRevit, you can just type pyRevit exe, which is exact same thing. Um, it's just exact same thing. So that, and then going forward, one of my best practices is to create two variables, which is a log file and a report file. Log file, I use it to log the results of the debug results of a command that's running using pyRevit. And the report file is generally I do a pyRevit environment report every time a user signs in, so I know what has been changed on their system, if they've installed a new version of Revit and stuff like that. Depending on what your environment needs is. These are not none of these are necessary or required. So now let's say I'm actually going to go to the bottom of this and steal some of these variables here. Well, let's not make it too complex, but basically you can create variables here for yourself for where you want to install pyRevit, what kind of clone you want to install, and all the other configurations. So you can use it across multiple different script lines. But basically, we want to use the pyRevit clone command to install pyRevit on the user machine after we finish install the pyRevit CLI. And that pyRevit CLI installation is generally once, and then you just use pyRevit command to manage it. And every once in a while, you keep the pyRevit CLI updated. So the format is pyRevit. The command is clone. You provide a clone name because pyRevit CLI tool helps you manage multiple different clones of pyRevit. So you kind of give each of them a name based on what kind of use case you have for them. And then the deployment, you can use a deployment option that I'll explain in a few. But then basically the rest of it is where you want to install it, what's the source, and what's the branch that you want to install it on, and if you need a log file or not. If you notice, all of these are optional. You don't have to use these. You don't really have to use these. Apologies, let me put this on. You don't have to use any of these options. So you can just say pyRevit clone and give it a name, and it installs the default deployment, clones the default deployment on the user machine. Now, to see the deployment options, you can say, I can go inside the pyRevit module, pyRevit script, and I've provided a link to this, but you can go under this and go under the pyRevit file. And inside this pyRevit configuration file, the different deployments for pyRevit are defined here. Currently, there are 5 deployments for pyRevit. You can install the core, which basically deploys the core only to the machine. There are no tools associated with it. This is for advanced users that want to use pyRevit platform to deploy their own extensions and nothing else. There is a core and extension that has the core, but it only has the pyRevit core extensions, which only provides that the pyRevit settings and that single pyRevit panel in the corner that has the reload and about and settings and stuff like that. So if you want to see that, and then the base has all the base, basically the core and the base. But this is the closest one to the public. The only thing that there's basically is different from the base public is that base public includes the pyRevit tutor extension that has a couple of tools that I've talked about in the pyRevit in programming for Revit videos on the YouTube channel. So that's an extension that's disabled by default, but it's available to user. This is the pyRevit deployment that you get if you use the installer. It comes standard with all these 4 extensions. The core, that's the pyRevit panel with settings and about and reload and stuff. The pyRevit tags extension, which is a newer tool. pyRevit tools, which is the standard set of tools that pyRevit has, and the pyRevit tutor, that is the tutor options for the tools that you can use. If you notice that none of these deployments includes the pyRevit development package. Generally, if you are a developer and you want to see the pyRevit development branch, you are experienced enough to know that you can just clone the Git repository or basically just use this pyRevit CLI tool to specifically request the development branch. So the development branch comes with everything, and you basically have access to everything that's inside a pyRevit repository. And then there's a base EX that has the bin, and it comes with the extensions directory and pyRevit and everything. So it comes with all the different extensions. If you install the base X, you also get that extra pyRevit dev extension tab that you can use to basically play with. So anything that's inside the extensions folder will be installed. So this is sort of like more flexible, because if we add any more extensions in the future, it also includes all those, because it includes the whole directory, basically. So these are the main different pyRevit deployments that you can use. So instead of, you can use this name that says, whatever that name of the deployment is, in front of this pyRevit command where the deployment name is sitting. So as an example, I'm going to, I've created a folder under C pyRevit, and I'm going to clone pyRevit into that folder using my PowerShell. So I'm going to say pyRevit clone, and I'm going to, pyRevit clone, and I'm going to give it a deployment, which is core only, just, it's small enough that it's good for this presentation. And then right after that, I'm going to go give it a destination, which is going to be C pyRevit. And it's going to be whatever that name of the clone is. Let's call it, oh, actually, I forgot the name of the clone. We're going to call it main. That would be the deployment. And then the destination, and call it main here. And we'll have it installed. So it's going to download pyRevit from the repository and install it there. Notice that we are not providing any source in here, because pyRevit already knows where the source of the original pyRevit is. You only use pyRevit source when you want to install pyRevit from your own clones. If you are creating a fork of pyRevit and customize it for your own organization and stuff like that, you can use the source variable to provide either a basically a archive URL, which could be a zip file, but if you're not using any specific deployments, you can provide a repo URL to sort of like download that from a Git repository and clone it on the user machine. This this tool is smart enough to know if you're using a deployment, it actually deploys a pyRevit. It's not a Git clone. This uses basically downloads a zip file from here. If you say like pyRevit master branch, it downloads the zip file that's provided by here, and it expands it. It extracts the information about that deployment, and it extracts those directories into the destination path. So this, when you install from a deployment, it is not a Git repository. If you don't provide a deployment name, it will be a Git repository, because it would clone, because you basically say you want everything. I don't want a specific deployment. So it clones the whole Git repository into your destination path. Now, if you want to provide a source for this variation of the clone command, it means that you kind of need to provide a Git URL, which expects to be a Git repository that it could be cloned from. And you can provide the branch and stuff like that. The branch option is still available for the deployments, because the deployment, that zip archive could be downloaded for any specific branch that you want. You may want to deploy from the development branch, not from the master branch. The master is default. I suggest using this only if you know exactly what you're doing. So yes, so this is completed. I'm going to go inside this, and you can see there's main, and you can see it's copied bin, pyRevit lib, side packages, and the necessary pyRevit arcs for this deployment, and the pyRevit file that describes the different deployments and whatnot. So this is the core deployment. It has the smallest size among all the pyRevit installations, about 100 megabytes on the disk. It doesn't have any tools, but it has everything about the pyRevit kernel, which is the core of the pyRevit, that provides the mechanism for loading the extensions and the pyRevit module that's available to them and everything else. It has a full library of pyRevit on all the other modules that I've created, and the side packages that provides a lot of like good Python libraries available to your Python scripts that you're writing. So you could use this to basically as the core that would load your own custom extension into the user machine. If you don't want to do that and you just want to install the pyRevit, and if I go here and say pyRevit clones now, actually I have a lot more clones on this system. Yeah, you can see that main is pointing here to see pyRevit main. And if you want to delete a clone, you can say pyRevit. I'm going to go actually to help here, because even I can't remember all these different commands. But basically you can say clones delete and provide that clone name to delete the clone. So I can say pyRevit clones. So if you notice that clone is a verb, but clones is a, it refers to all the clones that have been installed using the machine, and it gives you management features to manage those clones. So pyRevit clone clones pyRevit, and then you can see the list of the clones using that, and then add, forget, rename, delete, change the branch, set a new remote, and all that kind of stuff that we'll talk about. So pyRevit clones delete, and I'm going to delete the main that we created. So it goes in and deletes that directly, completely off of the user machine and off of the clones list. So if I say pyRevit clones now, the list doesn't include the main deployment anymore. And you can see that I have, whenever you say pyRevit clones, it lists you the list of clones that you have in two different categories: full Git repos and deployments from archives. This is my main development repo that I'm working on pyRevit, and then the other ones are the test one that I use. The deployment for each one of them is listed here. So this is a core deployment, that's a base deployment, this is a base public deployment, just for me to be able to check stuff. And these are the ones that are deploying from archive. These are not full Git repositories. They're the preferred ones if you want to get pyRevit to the users, because they don't have the full Git repository that is fairly large. It's about like 700 megabytes at this point, I think, even more. But the pyRevit base public that you want to install on the user machines is basically the default one. Okay, so we talked about a couple of different things about the pyRevit clone. So going back to the script, you are a user that just wants to, you're an admin that wants to get pyRevit to the users. You can say pyRevit clone main, or your company name. Let's say your company is called, I don't know, something like HBO. I don't know. I'm using something weird name. That's going to be your name of the clone that you have, or whatever you want to call it. Let's call it main. And then if you want the exact same thing that the installer provides for the other users, just use base public. But base public has the tutor extension in it. So if you don't need that, you can go. It's most scenarios you don't really need it if you want to get it to the users. Instead of using the base public, you can just use base. So it gives them the core, the tags, and the standard extensions. So you can just use base. This is actually preferred if you want to deploy the pyRevit to all the users on your environment, because they don't really need the tutor extension. So that even cuts down the size even more. Let's say at this point, what's the size of the base? That's the installation of the base that I have. It's also about like 100 megabytes, maybe slightly more. So it's fairly small. And then what you provide is the destination. And let's say I'm not going to put paths and stuff on here. I'm just going to say here that you say pyRevit install path, whatever. There's this variable that you've defined that means the pyRevit install location. So I'm just going to put that there. So this basically, that single line will clone the pyRevit using the base deployment into that specific location for the users. Now, the rest of the options for the tool is it's generally when you want to use your own repo. So if you have your own archive zip directory of the Git the pyRevit clone that you have created for yourself and stuff like that, and wanted to install it from a different branch and whatnot, you can just use that. Just make sure to know and set it that the zip archive that you're using is exactly the same format as what's being downloaded in from here. So it kind of expects that directory structure. And then the last option is the log file. So I've created a log file, and this is what I do always. So I say log, and then I use my log file variable here to make sure that every command that's being outputted from here, this actually includes all the debug commands. Everything goes into a log file, just for the sake of debugging in the future. So I'm going to say set destination, set, I don't know, pyRevit install destination. Actually, now that we have talked about this stuff, let's actually pull it from here. pyRevit core. Okay, I don't need those anymore. Okay, let's talk about them. Let's add them here. Okay, so I have the clone name, which is going to be my clone name. I generally set these in here. So instead of typing the actual name, you can use the variable name. And pyRevit root is going to be where we're going to install the pyRevit. that is same as the one that I showed you in example, C pyRevit. And I generally create one for pyRevit extensions that is inside. So I'm using pyRevit root and I'm joining paths. So it would be C pyRevit / extensions. It would be another directory under this. Then I'm going to install all the extensions into that. This is for your own environment, so you know exactly pyRevit and its extensions are all installed under one folder. So it's easier for you to delete them later and stuff like that. So this is, the fairly simple part. Set the global variables, let's say. And then in this one, I say clone pyRevit. Okay. So at this point, pyRevit is cloned on the user machine, and you're good to go. Now, the clone has been cloned, but you need to kind of specify which version of Revit do you want to attach pyRevit to. At this point, I'm assuming that you already know exactly how many different versions of Revit you're providing to your users. Most environments and enterprise environments know that and kind of limit the user access to different Revit versions. So you could be very specific about what Revit versions you want to attach it to. So now let's move forward in the help. We talked about installing pyRevit. You can read the rest of this and know more details about how the command works and whatnot. But it's basically very as simple as I described. And then you can go through the maintaining of the clones, changing the branches and stuff like that. I'll talk about a little bit more detail about this later on if you at the end of the video. But they're fairly straightforward. Deleting, forgetting, adding new clones. Sometimes you decide to copy it maybe from a network drive and you just want to add the clone to the pyRevit CLI so you can manage it from there. And that's the adding of the clone and stuff like that. And managing the Git clones is the same thing. If you want to see the branch or set the branch of the Git clone or the version of it or the commit, a specific commit that's sitting on, or the original, the origin of the repo, you can change the origin URL of the clone, the Git repository to whatever that you want to set it to. Setting current price, setting current version, setting the head, and setting the remote URL examples are provided here. And then we'll talk about the update in the clone in a second, but let's talk about attaching pyRevit to install Revit. So right now, right after this, that we clone the pyRevit, we want to attach it to different things, to different Revit installed versions. If you want to know what Revit installed versions, what Revits are installed on your machine, you can always write this generic pyRevit env, which is an environment report from pyRevit. It gives you this report that tells you about the clones that you have, the attachments that you have, the UI extension and library extensions that you have installed for pyRevit, the search path for extensions, and then sources, and here's the installed Revits that it lists all the installed Revit with the language code and the exact version. And then if there are any running Revits and some user environments about like which latest version of .NET that you have installed, or what's your app data path and stuff like that. This general report is very helpful for me as a debug tool. So if some users report an issue on GitHub and stuff like that, I can just tell them to run a pyRevit env and send me the report so I can kind of like understand how the system is set up and what kind of Revit versions and they have and whatnot. But you can use this, or if you look at the help, there are more detail. If each one of these sections could be pulled separately, so you can say pyRevit Revits, show me installed only, and it would list all the installed Revits for you. This is a good test to make sure that the pyRevit CLI actually sees the Revit installation. pyRevit CLI is heavily dependent on the builder numbers on the Revits. I had the option to go in a different path to basically look for the revit.exe files and stuff like that. But this is what I intentionally set to do because it puts me on this path of collecting every builder number for Revit versions that's out there in the database that could be used later as well. So this pyRevit CLI, the tool actually knows about all the different build numbers of Revit that's out there for the most part, other than anything that's not reported, because it also provides this extra functionality that you can check a version of a file, a Revit file, and you can double check that against the build number, and it tells you exactly like what version of Revit you're using. Like it tells me exactly that 2015 first customer ship is the installation of the Revit that I have, or 2018 3.1 and stuff like that. So it's a fairly, it's a little bit harder for me to maintain this, but at the same time, it provides for a more powerful tool. Anyway, so we want to attach pyRevit to Revit. The command is a single command that manages all the attachments, and it's pyRevit attach. You provide the clone name that you cloned, and then you have between the parentheses, you have three options. You can either say latest. This is the engine selection. You want to say what kind of engine do you want to use in the attachment. And by engine, I mean the IronPython engine that runs pyRevit at that time. I tend to go with 277 because it's the most stable one and it's fairly compatible with Revit Python shell and all the other tools except for Dynamo. But if you want to be safe with Dynamo and not run into DLL load issues and stuff like that, you can use Dynamo Safe, which installs the 273. Not installs, attaches using this 7.3, or you can specifically list the Revit engine, the IronPython engine version. And to just know what kind of engine versions are available to you, you can look under the bin directory, go under engines, and it would say 273, 277, 278, and 279. Like these are the options that are available to you that you can use in attachments. This obviously can change in the future. We're going to add more pyRevit IronPython versions as they come through. So one of these options, and then we provide the Revit year for a specific Revit version, or you can say anything that's installed on the machine attached to all of them basically, or basically attached to the ones that are already attached. This is helpful for when you want to update the engine number on the attachments that you have, and I'll explain in a little bit of detail. Now, this is the most important part that we're going to use. We're going to talk about this in the future. Most of the pyRevit commands have this option. The all users set in this case, they are the change that this option does is dependent on the command that you're using. But basically for attach, it tells the attach system to create those Revit manifest files, the pyRevit manifest files inside the program data, not inside the app data. Generally, when for a specific user, you want to sort of like create an attachment add-on to Revit, you can put that under app data, Autodesk, Revit, add-ins, and the Revit version. But this is the user app data roaming. So if you do this, if you run the attach without the all user, the other users can't see it because you have already installed it. You basically attached part of it under the admin user that is running this script because that's your user. When you say pyRevit attach with no all users, it means that pyRevit attach pyRevit CLI attach the clone to the installed version of pyRevit that I have. So it installs it for your user. It basically attaches to Revit for your user only. But if you do want to do it for all the users, you have to set the pyRevit all user option. So it installs it on their program data instead, under Autodesk, Revit, and add-ins. Exact same folder structure, but if you go here, you can see like most of the add-ons and stuff like that, but generally by default installed here like Dynamo because they want to be accessible to all the users on that machine. pyRevit is not necessarily that kind of a tool, so by default it goes on a user basis. If you want something to be installed for all users, that's what you're going to use. So in this case, I'm going to go and say pyRevit attached. I'm going to run that, and it shows me all the attachments, and notice that I'm using it attached. It has ed on the end, so it lists all the attachments for me that I already have. It tells me that you are attached to all installed Revit versions with engine 277. Now, let's say I want to attach to pyRevit attach. I want to use my the clone that I have dev, and I want to use the, let's say, Dynamo Safe engine, which is 273, and I want to attach it to Revit 2019. So it does that. So if I run the attachment again, see my clone is dev still, but the engine is 273. That's the engine that is attached to 2019. So if you want different engine versions, depending on, like for example, you're using Dynamo on 2019, but you're not using it on the other ones, you can use a different engine number. You can use a more recent engine and stuff like that on those. But basically, this pyRevit attach is how this command works. So at the end of the day, I'm going to go here after the cloning of pyRevit. You want to say, I want to attach pyRevit now. So I'm going to say pyRevit attach, let's say latest. Oh, actually say, actually the clone that we had is clone name. So we're going to put that here. Put that here and say you want to do the 277. I don't know, let's say you're not using Dynamo, but you want to be compatible with Revit Python shell. So I'm going to do that, and then let's say I want to install it to 2019. I want to attach it to 2019 and 2018 only. Let's say you have other installations of Revit on your machine, but that's the only ones that you want to attach pyRevit to. So at this point, after this command, if user launches Revit, the pyRevit will load. So this is a good point just to make sure that you've already tested pyRevit loads and there are no errors and stuff like that. This is how you can attach it to the pyRevit to the users, and everything's fine. Everything else that we're going to talk about from here is pyRevit configuration. Actually, one thing that we also forgot is all users. Let me see if I think I used the capital U. No, good. All users. So just to make sure that it goes into program data. So I'm going to put a comment in here that says, well, actually, type pyRevit in program data for all users. Okay, right? So installed, everything's good to go. We are done. I'm going to reattach because I changed my attachment. So I'm going to pyRevit attach dev 277. Instead of providing a Revit version, I'm going to say installed. So it would recreate all those attachments to all my pyRevit versions. So if I run pyRevit attached, now my 2019 is again 277. Okay, so now from then on, from this point, we want to configure pyRevit. Again, read this, this detailed explanations and stuff like that. We'll talk about the extensions in a little while, but we're going to go through and talk about the pyRevit extensions, lookup sources, and getting the environment info that is going to configure pyRevit. This is what we're going to talk about. So for every configuration option that you see inside the pyRevit settings window, the core configurations and whatnot, the pyRevit configs command can configure that for you. This is a fairly simple process. It depends on what kind of change you want to apply and what kind of set you want to set. You just basically say pyRevit configuration option and the sort of like the valid options for that. And you can also use a log file. It provides for all the core functionality because they're very specific. It provides shorthand subcommands, so allow remote DLL, check updates, auto update, rocket mode, and file logging, and load beta, and stuff like that. You can enable and disable from here, but it also provides this mechanism, configuring sensitive tools, we'll talk about it. It provides this mechanism that you can provide the section, because the pyRevit configuration is a sort of like a INI, Windows INI/toml file. If I go in the pyRevit and go under the pyRevit, see the configuration, the INI files have a section, which is that environment, and they have options under them. So section and option would define a unique option in the configuration file. So this is what you're going to do here. If this is something related to your own tools, like say you have created a tool that wants to set some configuration and stuff like that, and you want to set those configurations before actually user launches that, this is what you can do. You can say, my section, my switch, enable or disable. It understands the enable and disable, or you can just provide an option value that maybe there's an integer they need to set and stuff like that. So you could use the pyRevit configs command to just manage this configuration. Okay, let's say I have this stuff boilerplate ready here. Let's say at the end of this is what I want to do. Like you would provide a bunch of pyRevit commands, pyRevit config commands, like this, that says, disable the logs, check updates, disable these other ones are disabled, file logging disable, load beta, don't want to see it, users logging disabled, blah, blah, blah. You set these core configurations. Now, there is, let's say, sensitive now. Sensitive configurations are the ones that they're the limiting ones. I don't know, sensitive or limiting. So what are those? The pyRevit command CLI tool will allow you to set three things. User can update, user can extend, or user can config. If you say yes, active, no, the button in the user interface will be disabled. So user can update, no, means that don't show them the update button. User can extend, no, does not show the user extension, the extensions button in the user interface, in the pyRevit interface. And user can config, no, will remove the settings button. So you can use this to basically limit the user in what they can do with how much configurations they can do on their own pyRevit installation. So I'm going to say, no, oops, no, and no. So this is a pretty limiting situation. Like they can update because you're taking care of the updates. They can extend it because you have already installed the extensions for them, but we'll talk about. And you already pull the configuration, and you don't just want to make sure that the user can't configure it. If they are an advanced user, they can still go and mess with this pyRevit the config file that they have in the pyRevit installation, but at least this the button is not in the user interface, so most people don't even notice that this is a pyRevit installation. Okay, so that's that. And we talked about this. We talked about the pyRevit configuration. The rest of it is fairly straightforward. Just take a look at it and grab the ones that you do need. Like, for example, this usage logging. If you enable it, then you provide the file server, which file and server they want to logs these logs to, or would be a file, it would be a server. You can just write the different options that you have and configure it the way you want it to be. If you notice, none of these configured options have an all user, because the configuration generally works on your own user. Now, at the end of it, there is an option to config a seed file. It seeds the configuration to the program data pyRevit. And the next time a user launches their pyRevit installation on their machine, it actually pulls that pyRevit configuration from the program data as the seed and starts from there. That would be the starting point for that user. And if you have disabled the option for them to config, it's just that configuration stays like that. So at the end of your configurations, when you're done, you can just say seed. So you will seed the config and you're done. At the end of this, your script can end. You have installed the clone. You have set the configurations the way you want it to be. Set the limiting ones and whatnot. And then at this point, you basically say, seed the config, and it copies that configuration file with these changes in it into that program data directory. So the rest of the users and stuff like that would be able to use that configuration as the seed. So that's that. Extending extra Revit functionality, we're not going to talk about that. And then the debug, the log option, we talked about it. And the creating shortcut, we don't need to talk about it. The last things is how to install extensions for pyRevit. So very similar to how you install you basically clone pyRevit. There's a command that where is it? Install pyRevit. Managing pyRevit extensions, finding extensions. Nice. Okay, so you can search for extensions because pyRevit has a JSON file inside the extensions directory in the GitHub that basically lists all the available extensions that are available to pyRevit. They're those registered extensions. That's what they're called. You can search for them. You can search for them and say, where is that extension that I'm looking for? Sort of like just like very similar to other package management systems. So pyRevit extensions search, let's say search for Apex, and it would find the pyRevit Apex as UI extension, and it would provide the Git URL and stuff like that. Now from here you can say pyRevit extend, okay, and then you say extend with pyApex, and it would install that extension for you, just like this, and then you provide the destination for that installation, where you want that extension to go to. So in this case, I'm just going to use, let's say you want to deploy pyRevit Apex extensions to all the users. So before the attachment and after we install pyRevit, extend pyRevit, and you want to do this. I'm going to use that pyRevit extension directory that we created, and that would install the pyRevit Apex to that directory, and it automatically adds the search path. You don't have to do anything else. So the next time pyRevit loads, it actually sees that extension that users can use and stuff like that. You can use the extend command to install your own extensions. You kind of have to tell the command whether you are installing a UI extension or a library extension. And if you have already created extensions for pyRevit, I'm assuming that you know what's the difference. You provide the extension name, the repository URL, the destination path. If branch or if log is required, you provide that, and it provides it to the command, and it installs, basically clones that extension for you from your Git repository on that directory very easily. So that's basically how you extend pyRevit. Now, there's an extra feature in here that is for basically more advanced users. There are options for managing the extensions, just like you have options for managing clones, like deleting them and setting their origin repo URL. Like, for example, you might have created this extension on a repository on your repo servers and stuff like that, but then later on change the repository path. You can use this pyRevit command on the user logins to basically say extensions, origin, change it to something else, good to go. So and then yeah, so like here for example, you can say pyRevit extension origin that extension reset its origin URL back to default, or like set it like this: pyRevit extensions origin for PyApex extensions that we installed. This could be your extension. It's not necessarily PyApex, but you provide your extension name and then you provide the new Git repository path, and you would set the pull and push URLs for that Git repo. And then here, this is what I was going to talk about. So part of the extension system, if you run the pyRevit environment, you will see that it will list pyRevit extension sources, and it says default. This file is this JSON file is the source for all the registered extensions for pyRevit. Now, it allows for additional sources that you can add through this. So you can say you can add your own JSON file somewhere on your servers that would be the source for searching pyRevit extensions and whatnot. This is only valuable and valid if you have a lot of different extensions in your organization, and you want to basically give the user an option to just install it using that, or you really want to, instead of using the clone system for cloning your extensions, instead of using this option, you still want to say pyRevit extend and provide the extension name, but because this extension, pyRevit needs this resource to understand where that what are the definitions for that extension name, you kind of create that JSON file and add it there, so you can just say pyRevit extend and add your own extension name there. Which it really doesn't matter. If you are providing your own single extensions, this is the pyRevit extend UI, your own extension. This should be the variation that you use, and you should install it from the Git repo, so it's easily updated and stuff like that. Same other options are available, like update and whatnot, enable, disabling the extensions and stuff like that are available in here. Fairly easy to use. Just take a look at this and add the commands to your script as necessary. Just this is the update command. You can say pyRevit extensions update all of them, all the installed extensions, or pyRevit extensions update that specific extension only. That's the format for that command. And all of them, as you can see, there's a log file option that you can log the results to. So that's that. Actually, I was wrong about this path. These are the search paths for pyRevit. Apologize. The sources are the ones that I told you about. That actually they're JSON files that pyRevit would look into when you're searching for an extension. This is the one that you can add to add stuff in there. Okay, so at this point, we have cloned pyRevit. We have installed the whatever extension that we wanted into the directory that we wanted. Everything's good. We'll attach pyRevit to the Revit versions that you want to, and then we'll set the configuration and we'll seed the configuration at the end. Now, the only ones that are usually you kind of have to say all users is this one that it talks about the pyRevit attachment. The rest of them, they're kind of like go into whichever directory the user has access to. Like for example, if you want to install pyRevit to a location on C pyRevit, generally the user needs to be an admin. The user needs to be an admin user because of that. Just that flag thing. I don't. Okay. The user needs to be needs to have access to that directory. So if the user that you're running this script on doesn't have access to that directory, then you're going to run into clone issues because this pyRevit command cannot write to that folder. So obviously this script needs to be run by an admin user that has access to folders. And because there are no assumptions about locations, you can set this location to wherever you want it to be. You can install pyRevit, clone pyRevit in whatever location, install the extensions in whatever location that you want it to be, and attach it. Basically, you say all users use the program data for attachments, and then you do all the configuration you want and you seed it again to attachments. So this is a good configuration for installation and configuration for all the advanced users that are out there and want to install pyRevit for all the other ones. The pyRevit CLI tool does have a couple of more options, but take a look at the help. There's a sort of like a short table of contents on top of it that takes you through different things that you can do in pyRevit. There's an extra Revit related functionality inside pyRevit that you can list the installed Revits or the running Revits. You can kill all the Revits. For example, if you want to make sure, if you want to create a separate script and update pyRevit, let's talk about that. Let's say you want to create a different different script in I'm going to actually use different PowerShell script that runs every time the user logs in, and you want to use that to keep pyRevit updated. You can use this sort of like standard here. I imported that module into that script, and I'm doing an if statement here that says, test command exists if pyRevit CLI is on that machine, which means that the pyRevit command is available. Then pyRevit clone update my clone name. So you kind of have to copy these stuff in your other script as well. And the difference between two is obviously this is the one that installs the pyRevit on that user and you run it once and you're done. But this is the one that runs every time the user is. Let's save it onto user login.ps1. Okay, and then so pyRevit clones update. It means update all the clones, update all the extensions, and then do some reporting. So report the version to the report file and report the environment also to the report file. So at the end of it, you have a report file that says the environment. But for example, if you want to make sure that all the Revits are closed, this is generally set to run on user login, so no applications are running by that user at that point. But just in case, you can say like pyRevit Revits kill all. It would kill all the running instances of Revit just to make sure that if you want to do a core update or whatever, that's what it does. Or you can say, kill out all the instances of 2018 that are running. So you can provide the Revit year as an option, which one of them you want to close. And it also has the option for like getting file info from a file or directory path, and you can export that to a CSV and stuff like that. So plays with these options. They're pretty powerful and strong. The other one is the pyRevit caches folder. So caches folder, pyRevit caches some stuff when it's loading, just to make sure that it can load the next time faster. You can clear those cache directories using the pyRevit CLI tool. So it's a very simple process. The cache locations, as most of you might know, they're under app data, pyRevit, and there are, dependent on whichever Revit version you're using, that's the cache directory for Revit 2019. It creates and generates all these DLLs on the fly as it's going, just to make sure the next time it runs faster. Because in most cases, the configuration on the user machine doesn't change between Revit launches. So this extra level of improvement is actually very valuable. So this is almost everything that I wanted to talk about. Obviously, it's going to be it's already a 55-minute video, but there's a lot that goes to this that could cover. I need to update the version on that one as well. There's a lot that can go to this, and make sure that you take a look at the help. Again, this help is very easily accessible using the pyRevit help command. So don't try, looking for the help page and stuff like this. Just run the pyRevit help and it takes you to this page, and take a look at what what options do you want and whatnot, and set a good, write a good installation script for your organization that is fully customized in exactly the way that you want to install pyRevit on the user's machines and stuff like that. And this would be the most flexible tool that I could create to basically accommodate all the various needs different organizations have in getting the pyRevit and their own extensions out there. Obviously, this sounds a little too extensive for just deploying all the pyRevit installations to the pyRevit technically installations and the default pyRevit to all the users. You could still use this, theoretically, you could still use this pyRevit installer that's provided, and where's the, oh, sorry. This is this pyRevit installer, not the CLI, just the pyRevit itself that is designed for normal users. You could technically use that and provide a QN to it, because they're generated using the same advanced installer utility. So you can provide an option for QN to it and silently install it on all the user machine. It's just that when you run it, the challenge is that when you run it on the user's machines as the admin user, then the configuration is sort of all the configuration that the installer does. Let's actually talk about this in little detail. I'm just going to use the rest of this for correct color format, color coding. But basically, let's say you have installed 4.6.9 using this. You have pushed this to the user machine. You could technically do this, but make sure that you run a pyRevit config seed for configurations, and then pyRevit. So you seed the configuration that you have. I'm actually going to use that last one, but pyRevit attach, let's say, installs it to main, and then you say pyRevit main attached using the 277 to all the installed versions. So you kind of, because at this point the pyRevit is installed and its path is added to the system, to the user path or whatever, you can use the pyRevit command right after it to attach the pyRevit, to reattach the pyRevit to installed Revit versions using the all users option, and sort of like configure the seed. Just remember that when you're running this installer on the user machine using your admin user, you're running it as your own user. It does not install it for all the other users that are on that machine. This is only a convenience installer. So there are ways that you can use the original installer to deploy it to other users' machine. This makes it for a shorter script. It's just a little bit more challenging, and it's not technically fully supported. I'd rather have you guys use a proper script. And if you're not doing any configuration and stuff like that, like most of the script can go away if you don't need to install. Like these are basically just variable settings and stuff like that. So really the bulk of the work is from here to here. And if you're not doing any extensions, if you're not, for example, installing any extensions, or you're not doing any specific configurations on the user, this script could be fairly short. So I'd rather suggest to use the actual pyRevit CLI tool to do that. And eventually you have a much more powerful tool sitting on the user that you can use for other stuff as well, as we add more features and whatnot to the pyRevit CLI tool. So this is everything that I wanted to talk about. Let me know if you have better ideas about doing certain things and installing these things on the user and whatnot. I'm always open to new ideas. This is the best thing I could find based on the time that I can spend on pyRevit and the sort of like the features that were requested from the users. Yeah, let me know. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.